Welcome to the Cost of Poor Quality, a webinar sponsored by Build It Green and PG&E for the Energy Upgrade California Home Upgrade Program and the PG&E AC Quality Care Program. My name is Chris Cohn. I'm with Efficiency First California, and I will be your moderator today for the webinar. Our guest presenter is John Tooley with Advanced Energy, and I will be handing the webinar over to him shortly. He has a very interesting presentation today about the very important issue of quality and waste reduction. But first, I would like to welcome our Energy Upgrade California contractors to the call today. You are the folks who are out there working in the home upgrade program to provide residents with a full range of energy efficiency services and rebate offers, and through the PG&E as well as the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. And thank you for joining our call today. We also have on the line members of PG&E's AC Quality Care Rebate Program, providing services to homeowners in regards to their heating, cooling systems and quality and maintenance of those systems. So welcome to the webinar today. We do have some events coming up that I'd like to tell you about before we get started. The first is on July 15th. Coming up pretty soon here in a couple of weeks. This is a home performance sales training with Mike Rogers, who is a very well-known trainer in this arena. Mike will be spending a full day with attendees to work on key sales skills, tools, and approaches for delivering comprehensive energy efficiency and performance upgrades to customers. And as you can see, this will take place at the Stockton PG&E Training Center. Our next event is for the both home upgrade and AC quality care. There will be a PG&E Regional Forum on August 12th at the San Ramon Valley Conference Center. This again is an all-day event and will feature program updates, marketing, training, and education, as well as networking and feedback sessions. These are very productive opportunities, the regional meetings, so this is a very important opportunity. And then finally, I wanted to bring you up to date on our summer webinar series. In addition to today's webinar, on July 22nd, we will have an event with Peter Trost from Energy Circle. He will be addressing third-party reviews and how to make them work for your company. Peter is an expert in social media and web-based marketing and outreach, so this promises to be a very informative session. Then on August 14th, John Tooley will be joining us again for a webinar on the first step of quality management, 5S methodology, and tracking problems, which will build on some of the issues and techniques that he will be talking about today. So be sure to register for these events, and hope to see you at these future opportunities. So I would like to introduce John Tooley. John is a senior building science consultant with Advanced Energy, and he has a long experience in the building science industry, has diagnosed and repaired more than 5,000 homes and participated in weatherization of more than 10,000 homes. And he's worked with large utilities and building programs around the country, and is also worked and was a leader in the state of Florida with their quality building practices to improve building construction and renovation in the state of Florida. He currently heads the Applied Building Science team at Advanced Energy and continues to train builders and contractors, as well as present at conferences around the nation on these important issues that affect our industry and the growth of energy efficiency in the residential market. I'm going to take a quick break to let you know that at the very end of the webinar, we will be conducting a quick poll to get your input about a change that will be happening over the summer and the fall in the Energy Upgrade California program. The change is that there will be a rebranding in which the Energy Upgrade California logo, it will move up to an umbrella brand status, and our program Home Upgrade will have a sub-brand logo, and this will involve participating contractors needing to rebrand some of their materials. So we will be asking you some questions about that at the very end of the webinar, and I brought it up now because one of the questions is what you estimate it might cost you to rebrand your existing marketing materials and web-based outreach tools. So I wanted to put that in your mind now so you could maybe be thinking about that in the back of your mind while we participate in the webinar, and then we will be asking you about it at the very end. Okay, so now I just want to remind everybody our format of our webinars is that we do have a presentation, and during that presentation you are invited to submit questions via the question pane on your GoToWebinar control panel. So you just need to click the little plus tab there and enter your question, and I will pose that to John if questions come in during the presentation. We will also, at about the last 30-20 minutes there, have a Q&A session in which questions you can answer, you can pose questions, and John will address them as well. And then, as I mentioned, at the very, very end, we will conduct the poll about the rebranding issue. So at this point, we are going to have an initial poll question that is not related to rebranding, and if Karen, you could put that on the screen. So if you would now, please respond and let us know what your role at your company is. And that will help us understand the audience today and allow John to customize his presentation to your needs. So we're going to give it a few more seconds here. Okay, I think we have a good response. It should be coming up on your screen shortly. So it looks like we have fairly even distribution of installers, operations managers, and construction or contractor company owners, and then other folks who play other roles or perhaps are part of another stakeholder in the market. So thank you very much. We'll close that poll, and without further ado, I would like to hand the presentation over to John. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everybody that has joined the seminar. And also let me thank Build Green and Energy Upgrade California for having me, and I hope that this will be a very beneficial time for each of you, because we will actually go through what does it cost to have poor quality. And so if you give me the first slide, and I think that slide will help us understand why I asked for the poll. This is the pyramid of power, and what it really is saying is that managers and workers speak in the language of things. But when we're talking about an owner, they speak in the language of money. And so the cost of poor quality allows us to translate things into money. And I notice that there are 20% of the audience is managers, and your job will be to become a translator between things and money so that everything is presented to the owner in the form of return on investment. Because the first thing I normally get is, well, how much is that going to cost me? And of course, that's a very legitimate question. So the question is really rooted in what's going to be my return on investment. Next slide. When we're talking about quality, there are 4 fundamental quality truths. What's really important is, as we consider quality management, that we have a very common language in our companies that everybody knows exactly what we're talking about. Second to that is a clear set of standards, policies, procedures, and protocols that everybody in the company recognizes, knows, and follows. So we need that common language. We need a clear set of standards, policies, and procedures. And then the third one seems to be the one that's hard to grasp, but a performance standard must be 0 defect. And what that really means is an attitude. If you're a skydiver and you were going skydiving, certainly if somebody packed your chute, you'd want 0 defect. The same thing with a bank teller. When I take a paycheck or a check to get it cashed, I want 0 defect because I want the exact amount that the check is made out to, not 5%. So that's an attitude, and I think we all, if we look across our lives, we have that same attitude about many things. So I'm talking about an attitude here, an attitude that we really want to pursue 0 defects. And fourth is we should probably always measure quality by the cost of waste and poor quality. In other words, if I have a callback or a defect, what does that cost me? And remember that the pyramid of power is always talking about money. I don't want us to get shipwrecked here and think that quality is just money. And in fact, the 2 main focuses of quality are first on people and second on money. And so I'm going to show you where you start and how you end and how we secure a place for our employees. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that it's really important to have a common language. And if I ask, and I do this a lot all over the nation, ask an audience, what is quality? In the room, I might get 15, 20 different answers. All of them are close, but that's not a common language. And what I'm talking about is in our company, when I ask an installer, the manager, and even the owner, because this comes from top down, what is quality? They all have the same answer. Next slide. So I'm going to give you a very quick, easy definition of quality. Quality is doing agreed upon requirements and standards. Now, if you remember, back in our 4 important principles that we needed to have in a company to start quality management, one of which was establishing good standards, policies, and procedures that everybody understood. So if quality is doing agreed upon standards, that means there's no high quality, there's no low quality, not good quality, not bad quality. Often, and you'll see here in a couple of slides, often, take for instance, granite countertops are considered to be high quality. But quality is doing agreed upon standards. So either we did or we didn't. And that makes it clear to everybody in our company, Advanced Energy. We walk by this definition so that when we're talking about quality, we all have exactly the same approach to what we're talking about. Next slide, please. Here's an important thing to get before we start actually calculating the cost of quality or poor quality. All work is a process. Next slide. And here's a really important thing to grasp. Processes that we have in our company fail more than people. I'm going to say that again. Process fails more than people. Very important to grasp. Next slide. Blame should not fall on people, it should fall on the process. And so what in the process allowed something to happen? That's what's important to ask. Because, in fact, it is true that, well, let me think of it a different way. Let's say something goes bad. The first thing you normally hear is, who did that? When actually the question should be, what in our process allowed that to happen? And having a blame-free workplace means that workers do not dodge underneath the radar. In fact, it's very true that any time workers are afraid to tell the truth, there's no way in the world you'll ever have quality improvement. So it's important to start right here. The process fails more than people. People do fail. Please hear me clear that I'm not saying they don't, and I will explain that as we go forward. Next slide. So all defects, all inefficiencies in our work are caused. Therefore, all causes can be prevented. That's the good news. Because the more we prevent defects, the more we increase the bottom line. The more our workers have pride in their work. Next slide. I put this in the presentation so that we can see when you start to blame, there are 4 acts of futility when we blame. The first one is the red one. Blame workers for process problems that are beyond their control. They have no control over it, but something fails. Often we blame them, but in fact it's a poor process, inadequate process, or no process at all. Second, try to improve a process that produces the wrong outcome. That's futility. You actually end up spending a heck of a lot of money trying to improve a process that can in no way accomplish your desired outcome. And 3 is to inspect a flawed process expecting quality. If the process is flawed, you'll never get quality by inspection. Quality is built in, not bolted on by an inspection at the end. And 4, to inspect a process without the objective being prevention of defects is futility. So I inspect, I find something, my objective should be to prevent that from ever happening again by going where? Straight to the process. The improvement of that process is very important because, remember, process fails way more than people. So our culture should begin to be one of prevention. Everybody in the company is headed towards prevention, and it's really important that we begin to think about all of these 4 futilities and make sure that we don't enter into any one of them. Next slide, please. So workplace blame has got to quit. So begin to think about it from this viewpoint. And I'm about to take and turn all of these concepts I'm talking about directly in money into money and return on investment. So blame cannot fall on people. People make mistakes, and mistakes have to be, any mistake must have a prevention from keeping that mistake becoming a defect. There are times when people do intentional things, like they know the standards, they know the policies and procedures, but they just deliberately don't do them. That's a defect with intention. Anytime we have defects or inefficiencies where there is intention involved, then that's another entirely different issue that literally points towards that is a blame of humans. That is a blame of our workers. Next slide, please. So Edwards Deming was probably the most famous quality great of our country. There's three in the last couple of decades that really, well, actually the last 6 decades, it really loomed forward. There was first Edwards Deming and Joseph Duran and Philip Crosby. But I'm going to focus here on Edwards Deming, where he said in his 14 obligations of quality management, the 8th one was we must drive fear out of the workplace. And he said quality is impossible if people are afraid to tell the truth. We really do need, when we have a problem happening in our company, we really do need the people who made the defect or inefficiency at the table having no fear to speak out, because they can help the improvement better than anyone. They were there at the point of problem. Next slide. So our quality focus, as I mentioned earlier, was beyond people. Our employees, which are internal, customers, suppliers, and funders are all external. But quality focuses on all 4 of these and leaves none unattended. The second is waste reduction, and that falls into several categories. Defects, which I've already talked about. Mistakes must have a prevention process to keep them from becoming a defect. And intentional, I believe you sat down with a piece of paper, you can't come up with 10 intentional defects. Certainly someone who steals from a customer, that's with intention, or drinks on the job, that's with intention. All of those must be dealt with swiftly. Then there's the waste of process, the lack of a process, an insufficient process, a poor process, etc., those kind of things. And then waiting is a waste, where we're waiting on people or materials. Often we find that our crews go out to the site and don't have the proper materials with them. They either have to go to the big box and buy the materials, which means that they've got somebody waiting to get that job done, or we end up running a truck out with the materials and they wait for the materials. And then transportation to and from work, time and expense, all of that is waste. If it normally takes about 30 to 40 minutes almost anywhere to go from the shop to a work site, and the efficient routes and the time of day that those trucks come and go are really important. And then the last one, which almost seems the most important to me, is not using the intellect of your employees. Actually letting them be fearful where I can't draw upon their wisdom and experience. So these are what we'll be focusing on from this webinar, as well as the one on August the 14th. Next slide, please. So this again is Edwards Deming, and it's his quality improvement path to the bottom line. And if you look at the first step, it's improve quality is the first step that he said needed to happen. And what he was talking about is effective work. That's work that actually meets the standards that will result in customers and funders receiving what they wanted or needed. Second, down the pathway is decrease cost. It is important that we decrease cost because that results in everything that falls below. The third step is improve productivity. Efficient work. Efficient is directly tied to the investment made versus the return on investment. So the ROI, improve productivity. The more I improve productivity, the more profit I make. And then increase market share. We all know that if we increase our market share, we have more revenue and the opportunity to have more profit is at hand. Next to that is stay in business. And last and most important is provide a secure employment, which actually turns out to be the return on investment. So there is a pathway which actually starts with improving the quality. And the reason we're at the point of talking about the cost of poor quality is because I want to talk to you about how to decrease that to cost. Next slide, please. Philip Crosby, one of those three which I mentioned to you, wrote a book, Quality is Free. He also wrote another one, Quality Without Tears, Hassle-Free Management. He said, no one has ever, he said, let's see, he said that quality is free, but it's not easy. But yes, it is free. And absolutely no one has lost money doing a job right the first time. Absolutely no one. Next picture, or next slide. This is what I was quoting from him. Quality is free. It's not a gift and it's not easy, but it is free. Next, please. We actually lose our profit by actions that involve doing jobs wrong when we go out on the job. If we could think, it was Duran who said, Joseph Duran, who said that the absence of deficiencies leads directly to the bottom line. So we lose money when we don't do jobs right the first time. It costs us loyalty from customers. It robs us of market share, and it goes straight to the bottom line. It's pretty clear to me, and I hope I can show you that making a few changes can actually add to the bottom line without having to increase the number of houses. However, I don't know about you, I want to increase my revenue by building a company that can have loyal customers, which increases my market share. Next picture. So there are two cost components of quality that I'm going to talk about. The first is cost of conformance, because it does cost us to conform. And then lastly, cost of poor quality. Next slide. So we will look at the cost of conformance first. Next slide. It's prevention cost, also known as quality control. And that's quality control by the contractor. In other words, it's contractor-centric. It's centered to the contractor. And control, our quality control processes should be directed directly at variation from the requirements and standards. You remember the agreed upon requirements and standards, which is the quality definition. So quality control should actually always be targeted towards where we vary from those scopes. There's several ways to do that, and through this series and also in August and going forward, we're going to talk about these. There are areas where there can be self-inspection, which is done at the point of work. And then mistake proofing is a way of making sure that the mistakes we make are prevented from becoming defects. And then in the little picture to the right, you see plan, do, check, action. PDCA is a process to begin to reduce callbacks and put quality control in a place where it can reduce variation. So we make a plan, we do the plan, we check to make sure the plan worked, and then we put it into action across their entire company. We'll talk a lot about this in the future. Next slide. Now the cost of poor quality, which should be the measurement of any company's quality. So the measurement of quality should be the measurement of poor quality. If that number is 0, then you have a company that is unbelievable. So our attitude, remember, is 0 defect. We're headed towards reducing the cost of poor quality. Next slide. So when we talk about poor quality, we're talking about waste, which I did a little bit early on a previous slide. And waste is anything that consumes resources and does not add value to our end product. Let me say that one more time, because here again is a common language. Waste is anything that consumes resources and does not add value to the end product, like rework. Having to go back and fix something is waste. We already talked about it, waiting on materials and people. Transportation to and from, or actually going after materials. Motion, back and forth from the truck. It increases our cycle time. Cycle time means how long does it take us to do a job? And we all know that back and forth to the truck is very inefficient. Process, poor, too much, too little, inefficient. Inventory, too much or too little. All of these are areas where we can reduce our cost. And then, again, failing to use the intellect of our employees. The cost of poor quality is actually the cost of doing things wrong. So it's really important to learn how to calculate that and know what it's costing us. Next slide. There's been lots of projects where the percentage of the operating budget in many companies is between 25 and 40% loss. We don't lose money doing work right the first time. And our companies fall somewhere in this area of 25 to 40%. And obviously there are companies out there today that are less than this, and I certainly think we should think about it too, but this is normal to have about 20 to 40% of their operating budget is in waste. Remember, waste is anything that consumes resources and does not add value to the end product. So poor quality is consuming a lot of our money. Next slide, please. Here's the target I think we should have. And remember, if you're doing archery in the backyard and you set up a bullseye target, the target is for you to aim at. And obviously over a period of time of practice, you'll hit the bullseye more and more. So what I'm thinking is, and think it's really doable, is to have no more than 3 to 5% of the operating budget in waste, and we're always working towards the ability to improve that. Now remember, quality improvement is impossible where there's blame in the workplace. So we've got a lot to work on to get to calculating the cost of poor quality. Next picture. I did this table real quick so we can look at, 25 to 40% are the two first columns from anywhere from $1,000 all the way to $1 million. And those are huge numbers. That's 400,000 per million, or 250,000 per million. And you can look at the gross of your company and fall it in there. You say, well, we're not really that bad. Well, there's 10%, 5%, and 3%. They're all big numbers, money that we're wasting and losing. I'd certainly like to get in the category of 3 to 5%. By the way, this entire presentation will be recorded and be on the Build It Green site, so have no problem of getting any one of these slides. Next, please. There are two ways to think about quality, and one is where this first way is where product features are increased. For instance, the value of a car went up just by the fact that they tethered the gas cap to your car so you wouldn't lose it. Or granite countertops that I mentioned earlier. Anytime you add features to something, you're talking about the effect it will have on sales. So it can increase satisfaction. It can very certainly produce the sellability of that product. It can increase the market share for that product, and it can secure a premium price. But the major effect on features added to a product is on sales. And usually when we talk to people, this is why they think quality costs more, is because they're very much associated with the features that would be added. Next slide. The second is freedom from deficiencies. And this is the one we will focus on in all of our talks. It reduces error rates. It reduces rework and waste. It reduces warranty charges. It reduces cycle time. In other words, cycle time is the time it takes from the shop to return to the shop. If I can reduce the cycle time, I increase the amount of money we make. And then reduce service call rate. These are all focused on the effect is on cost. Whenever you reduce these things, usually higher quality costs less. And that's why Philip Crosby wrote the book, Quality is Free, and Quality Without Tears. Next slide. So Jerry Maguire said, show me the money. And I'm certain you must be at the point where it's time to say, let's take a look at money. Next slide. Well, normally when we think about the cost of poor quality, we think about those things that are obvious: rework, waste, retesting, inspection, delays, increase in cycle time, all of those things we can actually see. But the greater cost is below the surface. Next slide. And we can see that those represent the majority of cost and are not easily identified. But employee turnover, employees that are not happy, lost market share, customer dissatisfaction, excessive overtime, all of those things are very expensive. And we'll go after each. Next slide. I wanted you to see that what cost is not having that culture of prevention that I was talking about. Remember, we see a defect, the first thing we want to do is prevent that defect from becoming something that will cost us a lot. So prevention is only about 1x. It's stopped at the installer. If it gets all the way to quality assurance and somebody finds something wrong, it's 10x, a heck of a lot of more money because I got to go back and fix it. How much does it cost to go back? And then failure cost, if a homeowner finds it, I think this is probably off, but it's 100x, maybe 1,000x if you end up with an unhappy homeowner, or that they have become your quality control and quality assurance. Next slide. So process fails more than people is very important. Next slide. people do make mistakes and don't hit the bullseye every single time. Next picture. So processes that we put forward have to prevent mistakes from becoming defects. This is really critically important. Next picture. So before we start calculating, the question is, what is the level of our quality? Well, the level of the quality of any company is its acceptance to nonconformance to requirements and standards. Remember, quality is doing agreed upon requirements and standards. So what is the cost of poor quality? Next picture. Well, it's broken down this way. The cost of nonconformity, the cost of inefficient and ineffective processes, and the cost of lost opportunity of sales and revenue. Three major areas of losing money. Next slide. Remember, ineffective work is work that does not achieve the desired outcome. In other words, I don't produce the desired outcome of homeowners or program funders. It's really important. And next slide. In inefficiency of processes, resources used that exceed my return on investment. So I'm spending a lot of money to bring in revenue, but I'm not getting the maximum amount of profit. Next slide. Again, I just want to remind you, here's Deming's pathway. Next slide. So our desire is a path to greater profit. So to increase quality, reduce cost, and increase profit. 1, 2, 3. We want to increase quality, reduce cost, and increase profit. Next picture. So I keep teasing you. Show me the money. Next slide. Step 1 is build a spreadsheet that you can list the cost areas of doing business. Everything. Absolutely right down to insurance of liability, insurance on the trucks, cost of maintenance on computers, everything. You've already got this more than likely because the cost areas of doing business usually come back to you from an accountant or a bookkeeper. So this piece would probably not be very hard to do. But first is, what does it cost me to do business? This is how we actually come up with what we need to do in profit. Next picture. And so it would just list out each one of those and end up with what is the total cost of doing business. This is no materials in this whatsoever. So this is just cost. Next slide. So what does it cost to weatherstrip an attic hatch? Probably because they're doing other work, let's say $15 to $20. The bigger question is, what does it cost to go back to fix an attic hatch that was not weatherstripped properly or was forgotten? Let's take a look. Next slide. This is another spreadsheet. By the way, you can get both of these spreadsheets by contacting Build It Green, and they'll be more than happy to supply them to you. This is the way to calculate the cost of poor quality. So we'll do step 1 of identifying the loss. Next slide. all we do in that first column is insert the defect or inefficiency, whatever. So in this case, we're talking about weather stripping and attic hatch. So all we do is just type that in that one place. And we'll move to the next column. Next picture. The second column is insert all consequences that are related to that issue. For instance, you should receive a call. You've got to schedule a homeowner. You've got to schedule the crew. You've got time to travel there. You've got the rework itself. You've got lost production. Then you've got quality assurance and probably reporting and filing of that. So those are all kinds of consequences that happen because of the attic hatch. Now we'll move to the third column. Next slide. The third column is insert what you consider the cost of that consequence. Remember the first spreadsheet we did? That's where this number comes from. So you insert in here the actual cost of each one of these consequences taken from the cost of doing business spreadsheet. So these are accurate numbers that you come up with for yourself. Next slide, and we'll do column 4. Column 4 is how many times this consequence happens by the result of this defect. If you look at that column, in this case, the phone call had to happen twice. Everything else was just once. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 occurrences. So in this case, we filled out the green areas and immediately it calculated the cost of returning to do the attic hatch. $485. $20 do it right, $485 do it wrong. It seems like a tremendous loss that I could have had straight to the bottom line. Now we'll do column 5. Next slide, please. Column 5 is insert the number of houses you do per year. In this case, the company does 400 houses. That was an easy column to fill in. Number 6 column, next slide. All we have to do is fill in the green. This one's where insert what you feel the percentage of houses that you actually have this happening. In this case, the contractor predicted 11% of those houses, which would be 44. And immediately in the pink, it calculates the annual cost of poor quality of just attic hatch, $21,340 on an annual basis. If I reduce this or eliminate this through prevention, that money goes straight to the bottom line. This is the way to calculate the cost of poor quality. First spreadsheet is the first step, getting the cost areas of doing work, and the second is to fill in these 6 areas, and immediately it will tell you exactly what you're getting as a cost of poor quality. Next slide, please. Here's another one, just so you can see that all kinds of, this is where a company missed 2 wall cavities. And you can see that it cost them $3,161 per occurrence. And they figured it was 5% of 300 houses, which cost them $47,415. So now we have a grip on what is the loss. Now we can move towards prevention. Next slide. If I take a particular company, and that company does 350 houses, wall cavities, they have 15 houses that had wall cavity problems. And you can see the total cost was $47,415. Attic hatch, They only had 17 and a half houses where they actually did the Attacats wrong, but that was 7,245. And seal monitors, they had a terrible time in 275 of the 350 houses. 55 of those houses, they forgot to put the CO detector in or put it in wrong for 22,825. Their total loss, just of these three inefficiencies and defects, was 77,482. If you translate that to the loss per house for the total number of houses, that would just be 200. You spread it out over all those houses, 221. But if you actually look at the loss per house done wrong, it's $885.51. So these are huge amounts of money just on three common defects for this company. Next slide. So as I said before, it's really important to build quality in rather than bolting it on at the end because it costs so much money. So if we just take those two steps with those two spreadsheets, calculate the cost of doing business, and then take those numbers and populate the second spreadsheet, we end up with what does it cost to do poor quality. In seminars to come, we'll be talking about how to build quality into the process and not having it bolted on at the end where an inspector finds something wrong or the homeowner. Next slide. I do want to thank you very much for your time and let you know that the path we're on leads to greater profits. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That was a fascinating presentation and lots of provocative ideas and realizations. And I appreciate your walking us through these core concepts. I want to remind folks we're going to move into a question and answer period now. And on your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see there is a question pane, and you'll see the image on the slide there, and you can type in questions that you may have for John here, and they will come to me, and I will pose them to John as we move through the question and answer period. So I see that we have a couple questions in ready here. One is here it says, so what is the best way to create an environment in which my employees will feel safe to tell the truth, such as reporting quality issues? Is this better handled one-on-one, in staff meetings, or both?
Excellent question. And in fact, it is probably the very important starting place. Because I believe that it's very important to have a company meeting and declare in that meeting from this day forward, we're going to begin with all of our effort not to blame each other for things, and we're going to begin to work on our processes that allow the defect to happen. If it comes from management and management practices it, then it makes it move a lot faster. It can be done on one-on-one, but it takes a heck of a lot longer. It is, let me say it this way, it is extremely hard in the very beginning because what you're asking is that everybody put themselves out in the open to be corrected. That we want to stop blaming people. So in our company, when we did this, it came from management, and we immediately agreed, all of us, that we would no longer blame each other, but we'd try to improve a process that would stop the inefficiency or defect from happening. So I believe that it's easier to just declare that day and start forward, and everybody, remember, you can't blame anybody, so therefore if somebody does it, you just say, wait, wait, stop. Let's look and see if there's a process we have in the company that could prevent that from ever happening again.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, how do I decide which standards, that is industry or my own, to use to reduce the cost of poor quality?
These are great questions. So let me say first that every company should have their own standards, policies and procedures that everybody in the company knows. If I'm going to participate in a program, then I also align to those standards. So first, I have to have standards for my company, and I believe most of us do. And then when I join a program, they present to me the standards that they have to participate in the program, which I add those to mine and align them so that my entire company understands the policies and procedures of the program as well as ours.
Our next question has to do with the process of making these changes. It says, how long should it take to evaluate and update my company's processes? Is this a big deal or a weekend project?
Well, I don't like calling it a big deal, but it is. It's not a weekend project. Process improvement is lifelong. The second law of thermodynamics says that any time that a process is not attended to regularly, it erodes. And so hopefully I'm not making this sound bad, but actually it's a way of thinking in life. So the process has changed, it's dynamic. And so it certainly can't be a weekend thing, and it takes time. Everything that you're doing now is going to improve, and you're going to point towards that. So it's a way of life of your company.
We have a question here about working with employees. In the context of a quality management system, what is the best way to deal with an employee who has made a plain and simple mistake? And secondarily, is it effective to reward employees who achieve high levels of quality? If so, how can that be measured?
Good question. If I knew, well, let's take the first part of that where, read it back real quick so I can catch the
Sure.
first part.
What is the best way to deal with an employee who has made a plain and simple mistake?
Okay, that one is really important to understand, because if you truly believe it was a mistake, then it's not dealing with the employee, it's dealing with the process, which obviously they're out doing the work. But we as a company, as a group of people, gang together to help prevent that from ever happening again. So one-on-one, a mistake that is really a mistake, not done intentionally. Please hear me. I'm not talking about intentional. I know how to deal with intentional. Usually intentional mistakes are dealt with by either letting them go or firing them. So, and the second part of the question, if you read it again.
Is it effective to reward employees who achieve high levels of quality? If so, how can their level of quality be measured?
Well, measurement of quality for me is always the cost of poor quality. So let's say that I had a defect that was costing the company on an annual basis $10,000. Or let's make it $12,000 because the math will work better. If I knew that and I had an employee or a crew that just absolutely had eliminated defects from their work, the question was, do I reward them? I believe it's important to celebrate good work, and celebration can come in many forms. So the answer is absolutely yes, but I believe it has to be a celebration that everybody sees and participates in. This crew or this person is exceptional in their execution, and there has to be a celebration.
Okay, moving on to our next question here. Are there key quality install or other processes, in other words, a short list, that should be focused on first?
Yes. I'll give them to you. Start off with blame-free. Institute a blame-free workplace. Second to that is establish standards. Make sure that there are clear, concise standards, policies, and procedures that everybody agrees upon. Well, and then common language. They're all these kind of run together. That common language, if you're going to talk about quality in the company, is really important to make sure that you have a common language. In seminars yet to come, I will give probably 6 or 7 different definitions. This seminar gave 2. Quality is doing agreed upon standards and requirements, and waste, the definition of waste is anything that consumes our resources and doesn't add value to our end product. Well, end product is retrofitting Mrs. Jones's house. So anything that used resources and didn't end up with the end product for being happy, or the program, either one. So those are the first couple of things to really focus on and make sure step by step we work on them. It's a day-to-day thing. It doesn't happen overnight. Think about when I first started thinking about all this stuff, never blaming my wife for anything. Blame doesn't work. Come home and blame my wife, that doesn't work. So I had to discipline myself as well. My wife and I agreed we are not going to blame each other anymore. That takes time, but guess what? It really does work.
Oh, we have a question here about the bottom line chart. I believe that they're referring to the Deming chart.
Yes.
That shows productivity and providing employment. They ask, does establishing a quality process turn labor costs from a liability into an investment? If so, how?
Well, certainly it turns us from a liability into an investment. The how is a big question, and in fact, I would start by saying the efficiency of work is quality improvement, which is one of the 4 essential ingredients of quality management. And that's why I've been talking so much about a blame-free start there, because that efficiency investment has to have a return on that investment. And so without having quality improvement, you can make all investments in the world in a company, but often it won't have a quick payback. Taking on small steps and small successes result in giving the return on investment that you want. But we have to have quality control, quality assurance, quality improvement. Those are 3 things that we'll be talking about in the next seminar, where we talk about the steps of quality management and the 5S process. So that was a good question, but it's not one that can be answered in the time we're talking about it. I hope I gave you a couple of pointers, but that investment is in your company, and that investment should be a real good one.
Thank you. Our next question is, having a business plan that defines a company's desired outcomes helpful to establishing a high-quality process?
Well, yeah, a business plan is good, but a quality plan is better. A quality management plan actually takes everything we're talking about and puts it, so it's a part of the business plan. And we have a template that we'll be going over in future classes where and share with you that template that can be added to your business plan. But it is the things we're talking about and how your company will operate in order to have a quality outcome. So yes, a business plan that incorporates a quality plan within inside of it. How do we actually reduce cost? How do we have a prevention in our company? How do we have blame-free? Would be in that quality management plan.
Our next question, I think, follows up on that very idea. They ask, how often should I monitor our waste reduction results? And I'm guessing that having a quality management plan would include a strategy for this.
Yes, that's a good question, because there is a part of what we're going to be talking about, and these are so good questions. These are the perfect questions. There's what's called visual management. And the second you have, and I'll go back to the $12,000 defect, if all of a sudden you decide, and we'll talk about how to do this, these become transparent. In other words, there's a quality board that says we lost on an annual basis $12,000 because of the way we're weather stripping attic hatches. If there's a bar chart for every month thereafter, in other words, the first month we've got a process that improved and there are no attic hatches problems, and I get all the way to June and we've had none, and we had $12,000 the previous year for the annual cost of doing it wrong, we just saved $6,000. That is the way to energize an entire company, because it's visual. They can see what's going on. And remember, celebration has to be real. A lot of companies do picnics depending upon the cost reduction. And so it's important to be able to do the cost of poor quality and then make it visual. And there's processes by which we need to energize the entire company. Remember, small success breeds success.
Our next question has to do with training. They ask, what type of training in quality management should I get, and who on my staff should also be trained?
Well, there is an entire agenda for quality training. And who should get it? I think that from the crew leader up, it's really important that supervisors of people, remember they're the translators, when they see something go wrong in the field, they should actually be trained at a level of consciousness to be able to calculate the cost of poor quality and translate things into money. So you'd really want to have crew leaders and your managers and then the owner take those courses. And the good news is that Build It Green is beginning to bring that series to you. So I would certainly make sure that either you attend these webinars live or you go to the website and pick them up, because they're there and you can get your management up to speed.
Our next question asked, what is the difference between a mistake and a defect?
A mistake creates a defect. And so that's why I keep saying I've got to come up with a process to prevent the mistake. People don't go to work, high five in front of a truck and say, let's go in and screw up this house today. That's not the way they do work. They go there, and we're going to go over this. There's reasons why people have mistakes. For instance, inattention, lack of training, being in a hot attic and working close to the roof deck, which is the radiant surface, can actually cause a mistake. How do we prevent that is very important. Very good question.
Our next question asks, how do I get my coworkers to buy into revamping our approach to quality?
Oh, if it doesn't come from management, that's a hard one. I do believe that companies can change from grassroots up, but that's the long, hard haul. If it comes from management, most people want to do what the boss tells them to do. And so if the owner of the company engages slowly in this process, then coworkers either buy in or they don't, and it'll be very apparent. But if the boss is pushing it and is engaged in a very positive reinforcement works better. My mom always used to tell me, you can catch flies with honey better than vinegar. So it's really important how it's presented.
Okay, our next question is, in reducing waste caused by poor quality, is this something I can do myself, or do I need a specialist to help me?
No, I don't believe you need a specialist at all. First of all, if the company is headed down this road, and if you have the spreadsheets, they're very clear as to how to do it. This webinar, you can take the webinar and actually fill out those spreadsheets. That gets you to the cost. Once you know the cost, then the next step is, how do I prevent this from ever happening again? My retrofit company for 15 years in Orlando, Florida, attics were hot. And I recognized that that was causing mistakes of my people. So I bought cool vests. They're a desiccant that freezes at 67 degrees and gave them to all the people who work in attics so that, in fact, they could actually work without the effect of the attic heat affecting them as bad as with the heat in place. It's really important that it become a culture change in the company. When that happens, this moves progressively forward.
And John, I'm just wondering, in your experience as a company moves in this direction, how long a process is it as company employees and management sort of set these systems into place and begin to adopt this new culture? Is that something that happens in a matter of weeks or months?
To honestly tell you, I think I think you can see the bottom line change in a couple of months, because you're going to track it monthly as to whether the defects are dropping. But the whole process is not an overnight thing. We're talking about a transformational change, which as you move forward, remember, we're doing two things. We're trying to increase the profit of our company and develop our people. There's a big difference between development and growth. A graveyard grows but does not develop. Same thing with a garbage dump. So we're going to develop people. Einstein quit growing, but guess what? He kept developing. So it's not an overnight thing, but I certainly think that there's a major change that you will see, physically see, within the first year.
And I have a question, which it sounds to me that as a company moves in this quality management direction, that, and maybe you mentioned it, but there would be better employee retention as the system improves and everyone is in a position to do a better job and have a more rewarding experience at the job.
You just nailed it. Remember the celebration. If this becomes a celebration in the company, employee loyalty produces customer loyalty. So yes, the atmosphere at work changes, and the pride of work likewise changes, because it's recognized, it's celebrated. So this entire quality management process brings pride of work less turnovers, and loyal employees and customers.
And I also have one other follow-up question, which you mentioned, tapping into the intellect of your employees. In this process, it sounds like employees have an opportunity to contribute to this quality culture by looking for opportunities to, in the field and in their daily jobs, to make improvements. Is that the core idea of tapping into the intellect and experience of the workforce or the staff?
What a great question again. I can't believe how good these questions are. It is really important to recognize that everything happens at the workplace. Our workers are out there today doing work. The second we recognize that they know more about what they're doing on a daily basis than we do, and we engage them in improvement of the company and improvement of their jobs, which, remember, relates to security of their job. And so this becomes a delightful place to work at. People come to work actually going to very nasty places to go do their work, which actually they come with pride. And so this is a great way to energize a company and increase its profit.
Well, John, I want to thank you very much for all the great information. We do have a survey to conduct here at the very end of the webinar, and I wanted to, before we get to the survey, to remind folks that we do have some events coming up. John will be back with us on August 14th for the next installment on quality management, entitled The First Step of Quality Management, 5S Methodology and Tracking Problems. So please put that on your calendar and make sure you're registered. Also in July, Peter Trost from Energy Circle will be on deck with us to talk about third-party reviews and how to make them work for your company. That part of social media outreach is increasingly important these days, and Peter is very expert in how to make those resources work for companies. On July 15th, a reminder to the Energy Upgrade California contractors, there will be the training with Mike Rogers at the PG&E Energy Center in Stockton. So please get registered for that. Mike is a fantastic instructor, and this is a good opportunity for an in-depth marketing refresher. And then on August 12th, PG&E will be holding its regional forum for home upgrade and AC quality care contractors at the San Ramon Center from 8 to 2 p.m. on that day. So please be sure to get registered for that. So I'd like to move into a little briefing on our survey. The EUC, or Energy Upgrade California brand, back in May 2012, the California Public Utilities Commission made the decision that the Energy Upgrade California brand would transition from representing the whole house, or what we now call home upgrade program, to become an umbrella brand for a number of energy programs in the state that help homeowners and business owners with learn how to manage their energy use. So that decision was made in 2012. As you know, in July of last year, the name change went into effect, and our whole house program became Home Upgrade. And the CPUC also accepted a plan for this transition of the brand, which is now going to be rolling out this summer and fall and go into full effect, I believe, at the beginning of next year. So what does that involve for you and our survey. What it involves is a new logo to represent the home upgrade program, which you can see on your screen. This is the proposed logo. The colors scheme may change, but the elements of the logo are confirmed. And today, Build It Green would like your input on 3 key questions regarding this logo change. Our first question, we will conduct these questions as a poll, as we did earlier in the webinar. Our first question is broken into 2 parts because there are, I believe, 9 different options available for you to answer, but our webinar system only allows us to list 5 options at a time. So the first question will be, where do you currently feature the EUC logo on your marketing and web materials? Please list all the places where you are currently using the logo. The second question, how long will it be before you need to reprint or replace EUC branded marketing materials? This would let the statewide marketing team have a sense of when you would naturally be ready to reproduce materials versus having to be required to do that sooner than you would naturally do. And then finally, what is your estimated cost to reprint or replace EUC branded marketing materials? And as you recall, I mentioned this at the beginning of the webinar so that you might have an opportunity to mull that over. What is they are looking for here is the cost to reprint. Also, if you have a sense for it, the cost of staff time to facilitate a reprinting or rebranding process in your company. So with that prep, I will ask Karen to launch the first poll question. This is question 1A. Where do you currently feature the EUC logo in your marketing and web materials? Please select all the options that apply to you. So you can select multiple answers here, and we will keep this poll open for a little bit here. A few more seconds to give everyone a chance to reply. Okay, Karen, would you close the poll and show us the results? So it looks like brochures, consumer fact sheets, and door hangers are the most popular items amongst all the respondents. So thank you. We will move on now to survey question 1B, which offers a couple more options for where you feature the EUC logo in your marketing and web materials. So once again, please select all the options that apply to you. And we will let this run for about 30 seconds or so to give everybody a chance to read through the question and select the options that they're currently using the EUC logo for. Okay, Karen, if you would close the poll and show us the results. So we're looking at website and social media as being the most used outreach channels featuring the EUC logo. So let's move on to survey question 2. How long will it be before you need to reprint or replace the EUC branded marketing materials you have in your inventory? We have 3 options here: within 3 months, within 6 months, within 9 months. And if you have a sense of when you might, and I would suggest that if you believe it would be over 9 months, to please select within 9 months as an option, and we will interpret that as okay. Let's close that poll. I see that no one has responded. So that may be a question that requires a little more thought. And so our final question, Karen, if you would launch that, is what is your estimated cost to reprint or replace EUC branded marketing materials? Again, you have several options here, and this can be a ballpark estimate, is fine. And while you're reading through and responding to the poll, I do want to mention that To Build It Green is also going to have a survey on their website with these questions and a few more for folks to respond to, so you have a second opportunity to provide us with feedback about these issues regarding the EUC rebranding. Okay, I see that we do not have answers to that question at this time, but I thank you everyone for participating in the poll, and I hope that you all have a great day and have gotten some value from the webinar and the very important issues of quality management and corporate culture to reduce mistakes and improve customer satisfaction. Again, this webinar has been recorded and it will be featured on the Build It Green website in a couple of days. So if you have colleagues or others that you would like to share this information with, you can direct them to the Build It Green video library to reprise John's excellent webinar today. And then, of course, John will be back in August for the second installment of quality management training. So be sure to put that on your calendar, and we hope to see you then. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for your time today, and please join us again for a future Build It Green webinar. Thank you.